The grand chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure of crystal and metal that housed the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Today, representatives from 200 species had gathered for one purpose. They were going to deal with the human problem. Jiho sat in the small chair designed for his species, looking uncomfortable among the towering aliens around him. His dark suit was simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by the other delegates. His face showed no emotion as he listened to the accusations. Beside him, Sumin kept her hand near her datapad, recording everything. High Chancellor Vextar rose from his elevated throne, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of authority. His insect-like face clicked and buzzed as he spoke through the translation device. "We have tolerated human expansion for 30 years, Vextar announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We have watched as your species spread across the stars like a plague. We have warned you. We have sent diplomatic protests. You have ignored every single one." The chamber filled with angry voices. Dozens of aliens shouted their agreement. Some slammed appendages against their seats. Others made threatening gestures toward the human delegation. Ambassador Thren of the Clixian Hive stood next. His crystalline body glowed with barely contained fury. "Humanity has violated 47 territorial agreements. You have colonized worlds that belong to council members. You have refused to submit to proper galactic law. You act as though you own the stars." Jiho remained still. He did not argue. He did not defend. He simply watched and listened. For 3 hours, the accusations continued. Representative after representative stood to condemn humanity. They spoke of human arrogance. They complained about human military buildup. They showed evidence of human colonies on restricted worlds. The list of violations was presented on holographic displays that filled the air above the chamber floor. Finally, Vextar called for silence. The chamber grew quiet. Every eye turned toward the human envoy. "Humanity will withdraw from 23 star systems within 30 standard days," Vextar declared. "You will dismantle your military installations in neutral zones. You will submit to council oversight of all future colonization efforts. You will pay reparations to affected species." These terms are not negotiable. The Chancellor's mandibles clicked together in what might have been satisfaction. "If you refuse, the full might of the Galactic Council will be brought against your species. 200 civilizations stand united against you. Our combined fleets number 50,000 warships. Your species has perhaps 3,000 ships. The mathematics are simple. Human, comply or face extinction." The chamber erupted in cheers. Aliens celebrated what they saw as humanity's inevitable surrender. Some were already discussing how they would divide human territory after the war. Vextar raised one arm for silence. "What is humanity's answer?" Envoy Jiho. Jiho reached into his jacket pocket. Several guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons, but Jiho only pulled out a small metal case and a lighter. He opened the case and removed a thin white cylinder. "You cannot smoke in the Grand Chamber," Vextar said, his voice sharp with irritation. "It violates protocol." Jiho placed the cigarette between his lips. The lighter flicked once, twice, then caught. He took a long, slow drag. Smoke drifted upward in the recycled air. He exhaled slowly, watching the smoke rise toward the distant ceiling. Sumin stood beside him, her face carefully neutral. She had seen Jiho negotiate for years. She knew what the cigarette meant. "Envoy Jiho," Vextar's voice carried a warning tone. "You will answer. What is humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum?" Jiho took another drag from his cigarette. He looked up at the Chancellor with calm, tired eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. "No." The single word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. "What did you say?" Vextar leaned forward on his throne. "No," Jiho repeated. He tapped ash onto the pristine floor. Humanity declines your ultimatum. We will not withdraw from any system. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not submit to your oversight. And we will not pay a single credit in reparations." The chamber exploded into chaos. Aliens shouted in disbelief and rage. Some laughed, thinking this was some kind of human joke. Others demanded immediate military action. Jiho stood up. He was shorter than most beings in the room, but something in his posture made others step back. Suman gathered her equipment and stood beside him. "You are declaring war on the entire galaxy," Vextar said. "You cannot possibly win. Your species will be crushed." Jiho took a final drag from his cigarette and dropped it to the floor. He crushed it under his boot, leaving a small scorch mark on the ancient stones. "Maybe," he said, "but you're going to have to work for it." He turned and walked toward the exit. Suman followed. Guards moved to block their path, but Vextar waved them aside. Let the humans leave. Let them return to their worlds and prepare for the coming storm. It would change nothing. As the doors closed behind them, Jiho and Suman walked down the long corridor toward their ship. Neither spoke until they were alone. "They really think this will be easy," Suman said quietly. Jiho smiled for the first time that day. "Let them think that. We've been preparing for this moment for 20 years. They're about to learn why you don't corner a predator species." Behind them, the Council began planning their war. They calculated ship numbers and military strength. They debated which species would claim which human worlds. They were so certain of victory that they were already arguing about the spoils. Not one of them stopped to ask why the human envoy had seemed so calm. Not one of them wondered why humanity would reject such overwhelming odds. Not one of them considered that maybe, just maybe, the humans knew something they did not. The war was coming, and the galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson. The journey back to Earth took 3 days. Jiho spent most of it in his cabin, writing reports and reviewing intelligence data. Suman coordinated with military command, sending encrypted messages ahead to prepare for their arrival. When their ship entered Earth's orbit, 12 warships moved into escort formation. This was not normal protocol for a diplomatic vessel. But these were not normal times. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere toward Geneva, where the Global Defense Council maintained its headquarters. Below, Jiho could see the sprawling military complex that had grown over the past 2 decades. Shipyards stretched across the landscape. Training facilities covered hundreds of square kilometers. This was just one of 30 such installations spread across human territory. Admiral Minho was waiting in the briefing room. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Around the conference table sat 15 other officers representing different branches of human military forces. They all stood when Jiho entered. "Sit," Jiho said, taking his own seat at the head of the table. "We don't have time for ceremony. The Council has given us 30 days before they attack. In reality, I expect them to move sooner. They're arrogant, but they're not stupid." He activated the holographic display in the center of the table. Star maps filled the air, showing human territory in blue and Council space in red. The border between them looked like a ragged wound. "They're assembling 50,000 ships," Suman reported, pulling up intelligence data. 200 species are contributing forces. The main fleet will gather at the nexus point, then advance along 3 axes into human space. One of the younger officers, a captain named Yuna, leaned forward. 50,000 against our 3,000. Those odds are impossible." "The odds are exactly what we expected," Minho said. He gestured, and the display changed, showing ship classifications and capabilities. "We've been studying Council military doctrine for 20 years. They fight in large formations. They rely on numerical superiority. They expect their enemies to do the same." Jiho lit another cigarette. Several officers looked uncomfortable, but no one complained. "The Council thinks we're primitives playing at space warfare. They've watched us for 30 years and seen exactly what we wanted them to see. Standard ship designs, conventional tactics. Nothing threatening. But that was never the real military, Yuna said, understanding dawning in her eyes. Correct. Minho pulled up new data. Doyun, show them what we've really been building. A man with tired eyes but excited energy stood. Doyen had led the secret research division for 8 years. His team had been responsible for reverse engineering and improving every piece of alien technology humanity could acquire. We've been buying, stealing, and studying Council tech since first contact, Doyen explained. Images of various alien ships and weapons appeared. We learned their shield frequencies. We mapped their sensor capabilities. We identified weaknesses in every major ship class. Then we designed our ships specifically to exploit those weaknesses. The display showed human warships that looked nothing like the standard designs the Council had observed. These were sleeker, smaller, covered in strange protrusions and irregular surfaces. These are our real combat ships, Doyun continued. They use adaptive stealth technology that scatters sensor beams. Their weapons are designed to punch through Council shields at specific frequencies, and they're fast, much faster than anything the Council has. How many? Asked another officer. 2,000 of these new designs are ready now, Minho said. Another 500 will be completed within 2 weeks. We also have something else. Sora, if you please. A young woman stood. She was one of the lead engineers in the drone warfare division. We've developed autonomous combat drones, small, fast, and deadly. Each carrier ship can deploy 5,000 drones. We have 40 carrier ships ready. The math was staggering. 200,000 combat drones that could swarm enemy formations, overwhelming their targeting systems and tearing apart ships from the inside. The Council fights like they're playing chess, Jiho said. Big pieces, predictable moves, everything by the book. We're going to fight like a street gang. Hit and run. Ambush. Asymmetric warfare. We'll make them bleed for every kilometer of space. Minho activated another display. Protocol Defiance is now active. All civilian populations in border systems are being evacuated to core worlds. Every able-bodied colonist who chooses to stay is being armed and trained. We're turning the frontier into a fortress. What about diplomacy? One officer asked. Is there any chance the Council will negotiate? Jiho shook his head. They've committed publicly. Vexitar has staked his authority on crushing us. The only way this ends peacefully is if we make the cost of war unbearable. We need to hurt them so badly that their coalition fractures. Yuna studied the tactical displays. They'll expect us to defend our border worlds, standard defensive doctrine. Which is why we're not going to do that, Minho said with a grim smile. We're going to let them advance into our territory. Then we're going to cut their supply lines and destroy their reinforcements. We'll turn their invasion into a trap. The meeting continued for 6 hours. Every detail of the defensive strategy was reviewed and refined. Supply chains were secured, communication protocols were established. Contingency plans were made for every possible scenario. As the officers filed out to begin their preparations, Yuna approached Jiho. Sir, I have a request. I want to lead the first engagement. My squadron is ready. Jiho studied her. Captain Yuna had earned her rank through skill and courage. She had fought pirates in the outer systems. She knew how to think on her feet. The first battle will set the tone for the entire war. Are you sure? I'm sure. My pilots are the best. We've trained for this. Let us show the Council what humans can do. Jiho nodded. Talk to Admiral Minho. If he approves, the vanguard is yours. After she left, Suman approached. Do you really think we can win? Win? Jiho looked out the window at the stars. That's the wrong question. We just need to survive long enough for them to realize they can't win. The Council has never faced a species like us. They've conquered plenty of civilizations, but always ones that fought by their rules. We don't follow rules. We adapt. We survive. And we hold grudges. He lit another cigarette. In 30 days, they're going to learn that humanity didn't crawl up from Earth's gravity well just to bow to the first aliens who told us no. We're going to teach them respect. And if that means burning half their fleet, so be it. Across human space, military bases hummed with activity. Ships moved into position. Weapons were loaded. Soldiers prepared for the coming storm. The galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Humanity was going to war. And this time, the prey was baring its teeth. The Council fleet arrived at New Horizon exactly 26 days after the ultimatum. General Korthax commanded the first wave from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship in the formation. He had brought 8,000 warships for this initial assault. It was, he believed, massive overkill for a single human colony. "Scan the planet," Korthax ordered. His species resembled upright lizards with thick armor plating. He had fought in 17 campaigns and never lost a battle. This would be 18 victories. The sensor officer studied his displays. "General, the readings are strange. The colony appears mostly abandoned. Minimal power signatures from the surface. I'm detecting approximately 50 defensive satellites in orbit, but they seem inactive." Korthax felt a moment of satisfaction. The humans had fled. Sensible. They recognize superior force when they see it. Move the fleet into standard assault formation. We'll occupy the planet and establish a forward base. The Council ships spread out in a textbook pattern. Heavy cruisers in the center, destroyers on the flanks, support vessels in the rear. It was the same formation that had conquered 100 worlds. Precise, overwhelming, unstoppable. Behind New Horizon's moon, Captain Yuna watched the Council fleet on her tactical display. She sat in the command chair of the carrier ship Dawn's Edge, surrounded by her crew. Her second officer, Lieutenant Tae-hyung, monitored the drone systems. "They're doing exactly what we predicted," Tae-hyung said. "Formation Alpha 7 by the book. They'll be in optimal position in 4 minutes." Yuna felt her heart pounding but kept her voice steady. "All ships, hold position, maintain radio silence, drone carriers, prepare for deployment on my mark." She watched the enemy fleet move closer to the planet. The Council ships were huge and powerful. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. But they moved slowly, ponderously, like ancient beasts that had never learned to fear. "General," the Council sensor officer said suddenly, "those defensive satellites are powering up." Korthax barely glanced at the display. "Destroy them. Point defense systems should handle such primitive weapons easily." But the satellites weren't firing. Instead, they began moving, accelerating, breaking apart. Each satellite split into dozens of smaller objects that scattered in all directions. "What are they doing?" Korthax demanded. The answer came seconds later. What the Council had thought were 50 satellites were actually 50 drone carriers, and each one had just deployed 5,000 combat drones. 250,000 small craft suddenly filled the space around the Council fleet. They didn't move in formation. They didn't follow predictable patterns. They swarmed like angry insects, each one following independent targeting protocols designed by human military AI. "All ships, evasive action!" Korthax shouted. But it was too late. The drones hit the Council formation like a hurricane. They were too small and numerous for the large ship's weapons to track effectively. Point defense systems tried to respond, but were overwhelmed within seconds. The drones used cutting lasers and kinetic penetrators to slice through shields and hull plating. A Council destroyer exploded as drones breached its reactor core. Then another, and another. The disciplined formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried desperately to fend off thousands of tiny attackers. "Now," Yuna said quietly. Dawn's Edge and 40 other human ships emerged from behind the moon. They were smaller than the Council vessels, but incredibly fast. They had been designed for exactly this kind of combat. "All ships, execute Pattern Gamma," Yuna ordered. "Tae-hyung, target their command ships." The human fleet split into small groups, each targeting a different section of the Council formation. They didn't try to slug it out toe-to-toe with the larger ships. Instead, they darted in, fired focused bursts at specific weak points that Doyun's research had identified, then accelerated away before the Council ships could return fire. Lieutenant Tae-hyung's tactical display showed enemy shield frequencies in real time. "Their flagship is adjusting shields, compensating for our weapon frequencies." "Smart," Yuna acknowledged. "Switch to kinetic rounds. Slave link our targeting to the drone swarms." The human ships began working in perfect coordination with the autonomous drones. While the drones occupied the Council ships' defenses, the human vessels hammered at critical systems: engines, weapons arrays, command bridges. General Korthax felt his flagship shudder as human weapons found their mark. "Return fire! Concentrate all weapons on those human ships!" But the human vessels were too fast and too coordinated. They used the Council's own ships as cover, darting between the larger vessels where the Council weapons couldn't fire without hitting their own forces. "We're losing cohesion," his tactical officer reported. 40% of our fleet is combat ineffective, 72 ships destroyed, casualties are catastrophic." Korthax couldn't believe what he was seeing. 8,000 ships against a few dozen human vessels and a swarm of drones. The mathematics should have been impossible. But his fleet was being torn apart. "Pull back," he finally ordered. "All ships, retreat to Rally Point Delta." The Council fleet tried to disengage, but the human forces pursued them relentlessly. The drones continued their assault until the Council ships jumped to faster-than-light speed, fleeing the system. When the last enemy vessel disappeared, Yuna allowed herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. Around her, the crew erupted in cheers. "Damage report," she said, forcing herself to stay focused. 23 ships damaged, 7 destroyed," the tactical officer reported. "Drone losses at 62%. Enemy casualties estimated at 3,000 ships destroyed or disabled." 3,000 Council ships, against 7 human vessels lost. The numbers seemed impossible, but the debris field surrounding New Horizon proved it was real. Tae-hyung was already compiling the battle data. They fought exactly as predicted. Rigid formations, slow response times, over-reliance on main weapons. Once we disrupted their formation, they couldn't adapt. Yuna nodded. "Send all combat data to Admiral Minho. They need to know their tactics work." She paused, then added, "And send a message to the survivors. Tell them this was just one colony. We have hundreds more. If they want them, they're going to bleed for every single one." Back at his rally point, General Korthax stared at his remaining fleet in shock. He had started the day with 8,000 ships. Now he had fewer than 5,000 combat-ready vessels, and he had nothing to show for it. No conquered planet, no defeated enemy, just casualties and humiliation. "Send a message to the High Chancellor," he said quietly. "Tell him the humans are not what we thought. Tell him we need reinforcements. Tell him this war is going to cost far more than anyone imagined." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread. The invincible Council fleet had been beaten. Humanity, the primitive upstart species, had won the first engagement decisively. Some Council members began to question the war. Others demanded more ships be sent to crush the humans. But in the human systems, in military bases and colony stations, soldiers and civilians alike received the news with grim satisfaction. They had proven something important. Humanity could fight. Humanity could win. The war had truly begun, and the galaxy was starting to realize that the humans were not going to surrender. They were going to fight, and they were very, very good at it. 3 months into the war, the galaxy looked very different than anyone had predicted. High Chancellor Vexitar stood in the Grand Chamber reviewing casualty reports that seemed impossible. The Council had lost 30,000 ships. Humanity had lost perhaps 2,000. Every major engagement had gone badly for the Council forces. "Explain this to me again," Vexitar demanded of his military advisors. "How is this possible?" General Korthax, still recovering from his defeat at New Horizon, highlighted several tactical displays. "The humans don't fight like any species we've encountered. They use asymmetric warfare, hit-and-run tactics. They ambush our supply lines. They mine jump points. They turn every battle into a trap. Then adapt!" Vexitar slammed one of his forearms against the table. "You have superior numbers, superior firepower. Use them!" "We try, Chancellor," another general responded. "But the moment we concentrate our forces, the humans scatter. When we spread out to patrol larger areas, they mass attack our isolated units. They're fighting a guerrilla war in space, and our doctrine has no answer for it." Ambassador Thren of the Clixian Hive had been listening quietly. Now he spoke. "Perhaps it is time to consider negotiation. The war is not going as planned. Our member species are growing restless. Casualties are mounting. Resources are being depleted." "Absolutely not!" Vexitar's mandibles clicked angrily. "We do not negotiate with primitives. We do not surrender to a species that has been in space for less than a century. Send more ships. Conscript more forces. This war ends with human subjugation or human extinction." While the Council argued, Captain Yuna was preparing her most ambitious operation yet. Deep in Council space, a massive shipyard called Vertex Station produced a quarter of the Council's military vessels. If it could be destroyed, the Council's ability to replace losses would be crippled. She stood before her assembled strike team in the briefing room. 50 ships, 5,000 of her best crew members. This was a suicide mission by any reasonable calculation. Vertex Station is protected by 2,000 defensive platforms and a standing garrison of 500 ships, Yuna explained, showing the station's layout on holographic displays. "It's deep in Council territory, 12 jumps from the nearest human system. If we fail, there's no rescue, no reinforcements. We either succeed or we die." Lieutenant Taehyung pulled up the attack plan. "We'll use the new stealth ships that Doyun's team finished last week. We'll jump in scattered across 3 light hours, then converge on the station simultaneously. Speed and surprise are our only advantages." One of the pilots, a young woman named Hyeri, who had volunteered from the colonies, raised her hand. "What about civilians? Vertex Station has over 1 million workers." Yuna had thought about this. "We target military production facilities only. Reactor cores, dry docks, weapons manufacturing. We avoid residential sections. This is a military strike, not terrorism." The assault began 48 hours later. Yuna's ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect synchronization. The stealth technology worked. For nearly 10 minutes, the Council forces didn't detect the human fleet approaching. When they finally registered the attack, it was too late. Yuna's ships had already penetrated the defensive perimeter. Her tactical officers had studied Vertex Station's layout for weeks. They knew every weapon emplacement, every shield generator, every structural weakness. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega," Yuna commanded. "Taehyung, you have weapons control." The human ships split into teams. One group targeted the defensive platforms, overwhelming them with coordinated fire. Another team deployed specialized explosives against the dry docks where new Council ships were under construction. A third team hit the main reactor complex. The Council garrison ships scrambled to respond, but they were facing human forces fighting at their absolute best. Every ship captain knew this mission was critical. Every crew member understood that failure meant the war might drag on for years. Hyeri piloted her fighter through a hail of defensive fire, delivering a plasma charge directly into a weapons manufacturing facility. The explosion sent debris cascading through space. Around her, other pilots made similar runs, each one targeting a specific objective. "Primary targets hit," Tae-hyung reported. "Station is losing power. Their shipbuilding capability is down by 70%. "Time to leave," Yuna said. "All ships, jump sequence initiated. See you at the rally point." The human fleet scattered again, jumping in different directions to confuse pursuit. Council ships tried to follow but lost track, as the humans used carefully planned routes that took advantage of gravitational anomalies and sensor-disrupting nebulae. When Yuna's fleet regrouped at the hidden rally point, she counted her losses. 12 ships destroyed, 1,800 crew members dead. But Vertex Station was crippled. The Council had lost their primary shipyard. Back on Earth, Admiral Minho received the report with mixed emotions. The mission was a success, but the cost was high. Each lost crew member was someone's child, parent, or friend. Victory didn't make the sacrifice easier. "The Council's production capacity is severely damaged," Suman reported. "Intelligence suggests it will take them at least a year to rebuild Vertex Station's capabilities. In the meantime, they can't replace their losses as quickly." Minho pulled up the strategic overview. "The war is turning. We've won 11 of the last 13 major engagements, but the Council still has numbers on their side. We need to break their coalition." That opportunity came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Thren sent a secret communication to Hyeri, who had become something of a celebrity among human colonists after the Vertex Station raid. The message was simple. Some council members wanted to talk about peace, not publicly, not officially, but they were willing to listen. Hyeri brought the message to Jiho, who had returned to Earth after months of managing diplomatic channels. He sat in his office smoking his usual cigarette, considering the implications. "Thren represents the moderate faction," Jiho said. "If we can split the council, the war ends. But Vextar won't negotiate. He staked everything on crushing us." "Then we need to remove Vextar," Suman suggested. "Not assassinate him, but discredit him. Make his position untenable." Jiho smiled. "We need a demonstration. Something that shows the council members their leader is leading them to ruin." He activated his communication console. "Admiral Minho, how would you like to take a trip into council space? I think it's time we threaten their homeworlds." The plan was audacious. A human fleet would advance into the core systems, not to conquer, but to demonstrate capability. To show the council that continued war meant their own worlds would burn. Admiral Minho led a fleet of 500 ships deep into Council territory. They avoided major engagements, using speed and stealth to bypass defensive lines. When they reached the Clixian home system, they broadcast a message on all channels. "This is Admiral Minho of Earth's Defense Fleet. We have reached your core worlds. We could attack, we could devastate your planets, but we choose not to. Humanity does not want this war. We want peace. We want recognition and respect. The choice is yours. Continue fighting and watch your worlds burn. Or negotiate and end this madness." The fleet remained in the system for 6 hours, demonstrating complete tactical superiority, then jumped away before the Council could organize a response. But the message was received. If humans could reach the core worlds, nowhere in Council space was safe. In the Grand Chamber, Vextar faced a vote of no confidence. Moderate Council members, led by Thren, argued that the war was unwinnable, and the Chancellor's leadership had brought only disaster. The vote was close, but Vextar lost. Ambassador Thren became interim leader. His first act was to send an official request for peace negotiations to Jiho. The message was brief but significant. The Council was ready to talk. Jiho received the message in his office. He took a long drag from his cigarette and smiled. The war wasn't over yet. But for the first time, he could see a path to peace, a path where humanity would stand as equals, not subjects. The neutral space station hung between human and council space, a relic from earlier diplomatic times. It had been abandoned for months during the war, but now it hummed with activity again. Ships from both sides docked carefully, maintaining cautious distance. Jiho arrived with a small delegation. Sumin was there, of course, along with Admiral Minho and Hyeri, representing the colonial interests. They walked through corridors that still showed scorch marks from the early days of conflict. Ambassador Thren waited in the main conference hall with his own team. The Clixian's crystalline body looked dimmer than before, as if the war had drained some essential light from him. Around the table sat representatives from a dozen major council species, but notably absent were the hardline factions that still supported Vextar. "Envoy Jiho," Thren greeted him formally. "Thank you for coming." Jiho pulled out his cigarette case. He paused, looking at Thren with a slight smile. "May I?" Thren made a gesture that might have been a laugh. "Protocol seems rather unimportant now. Smoke if you wish." Jiho lit his cigarette and took a seat. The other delegates filed in and found their places. For a long moment, everyone sat in silence, taking in the weight of the occasion. "6 months ago, I sat in the Grand Chamber and listened to your ultimatum," Jiho began. "You told me to surrender or face extinction. I said no. Today you've asked for negotiations. I'm curious what changed your mind." Thren didn't flinch from the directness. "We were arrogant. We believed our own propaganda about primitive humans. We thought numerical superiority guaranteed victory. We were wrong. Your species has cost us 40% of our military capacity. 50,000 ships destroyed or disabled, economic strain across 200 worlds. 3 council species have pulled out of the coalition entirely. 7 more are considering it." "And Vextar?" Sumin asked. "Under house arrest on his homeworld," another delegate answered. "He still has supporters, but they're a minority now. Most of the council wants peace." Admiral Minho leaned forward. "You understand that peace requires more than just stopping the fighting. We need guarantees, recognition, equal status." "That is why we're here," Thren said. "To discuss terms that both sides can accept." The negotiations took 3 days. Both sides had demands. The Council wanted humans to withdraw from certain disputed systems. Humanity wanted full Council membership and recognition of their territorial claims. There were arguments, compromises, and moments when it seemed the talks might collapse. Hyeri proved surprisingly effective as a negotiator. As someone who had lived through the war, who had lost friends in combat, she spoke with a moral authority that even hardline council members respected. She argued that the colonists who had died defending their worlds deserved to have those sacrifices honored with lasting peace. "We didn't start this war," Hyeri said during one tense session. "We were expanding peacefully, terraforming worlds that no one else wanted. You declared war because we didn't ask permission, because we didn't bow. Well, we've proven we don't have to bow. Now we can either build something together or keep destroying each other. Your choice." On the second day, a young council liaison named Jaewon approached Sumin during a break. He was from a species that resembled upright foxes, with russet fur and intelligent eyes. "I wanted to apologize," Jaewon said quietly. "My people supported the war. We believed what we were told about humans being dangerous. But I've been reading your history. You're survivors. You've overcome incredible odds on your own world. We should have recognized that strength instead of fearing it." Sumin studied him. "Your species lost ships in the war?" "My brother commanded a destroyer. He died at New Horizon." Jaewon's ears drooped. "I was angry at first. At humans. At your Captain Yuna. But then I read the battle reports. Your forces targeted military vessels only. You allowed escape pods to retreat. You could have massacred the survivors, but didn't. That's when I understood. You're not monsters. You're just people trying to survive. I'm sorry about your brother, Suman said sincerely. This war cost both sides too much. On the third day, the final agreement was reached. Humanity would receive full council membership with equal voting rights. Human territorial claims would be recognized for all systems currently occupied. A demilitarized zone would be established along the border, patrolled jointly by human and council forces. Reparations would flow both ways, compensating civilians affected by the conflict. The signing ceremony was brief. No grand speeches. No celebrations. Both sides were too exhausted for that. Jiho signed the treaty with a simple pen, the same one he had carried to that first council meeting. Thren affixed his crystalline seal next to the signature. "This peace will hold?" Jiho asked quietly. "If both sides want it to," Thren replied. "The hardliners on both our sides will resist. But I think most beings are tired of war. They want to build instead of destroy." 2 weeks later, Jiho attended his first official council session as a full member. The Grand Chamber had been repaired from battle damage. The same seats, the same towering architecture, but the atmosphere was completely different. He took his seat among the other delegates. No longer in the small visitor's chair, but in a full representative position, equal to all others. Suman sat beside him, along with 2 other human delegates. The session began with routine business, trade agreements, border disputes that were resolved through mediation instead of threats. It was boring, bureaucratic work. Jiho loved every minute of it. Boring meant peaceful. During a break, Jaewon approached with a strange beverage in hand. "Envoy Jiho, I brought this from my home world. It's a traditional drink we share with friends. I hoped you might try it." Jiho accepted the cup. The liquid inside was amber and smelled faintly of honey. He took a sip. It was sweet, but with a sharp aftertaste. "Interesting, thank you." "I also wanted to say," Jaewon continued, "that I'm glad humans joined the council. We need perspectives like yours, species that don't just follow the rules but question them." Suman smiled. "Be careful what you wish for. We're going to be very annoying colleagues." "I'm counting on it," Jaewon said with what might have been a fox-like grin. That evening, back on Earth, Jiho stood on his apartment balcony overlooking Geneva. The city lights spread out below, peaceful and secure. He lit a cigarette and watched the smoke drift into the night sky. Admiral Minho joined him, holding 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed one to Jiho. "We did it. Peace." "We survived," Jiho corrected. "That's all we ever needed to do. Survive long enough for them to realize we weren't going away." "Captain Yuna is being promoted," Minho said. "She'll command the new Joint Defense Force along the demilitarized zone, working alongside council officers." Jiho smiled. "She earned it. She and Tai-hyung and all the others who fought. They bought us a future." They drank in companionable silence for a while. Finally, Minho asked, "Do you think the peace will last?" Jiho considered the question. "I think it will. Not because everyone loves each other now, but because the council learned something important. They learned that humanity doesn't surrender. We bend, we adapt, we find ways to survive, and they learned that working with us is better than fighting us." "And we learned something too," Minho added. "We learned we can stand among the stars as equals. We don't have to dominate the galaxy. We just have to earn respect." Jiho took a drag from his cigarette and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, council ships and human ships were beginning to patrol together. Former enemies learning to trust each other. It would take time. There would be incidents and setbacks, but it was a start. "You know what the best part is?" Jiho said. 6 months ago, Vextar stood in that chamber and told me humanity would be crushed. He gave me an ultimatum, and I said no." He smiled. "Turns out that was the right answer." Minho raised his glass. "To saying no." Jiho touched his glass to Minho's. "To surviving, to earning respect, to humanity's place among the stars. They drank, and above them, the stars shone bright. The same stars that had once seemed full of threats now held promise. Humanity had gone to war and proven itself. Now came the harder work of building peace. But if there was one thing humans were good at, it was adapting to new challenges. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Jiho thought as he finished his cigarette, was exactly how it should be. Change came hard, but it came. And humanity had just changed everything. The war was over. The future had begun. And somewhere in the grand chamber, a scorch mark on ancient stones remained where a human envoy had crushed his cigarette and refused to surrender. It would stay there for 1,000 years, a reminder of the day the galaxy learned that humanity could not be intimidated, only respected.